welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Videomail for the week of November 18th, 2013. Welcome to the site to you new members, and welcome back to the old. The Ask Videomail is your chance to get your questions in character animation or performance answered in a video just like this one, but I need your question if I'm going to answer it, so please send your questions to webmaster@kennyroy.com. I go through all the questions and I answer the ones that I think will help the most people. There's no such thing as a stupid question, and it is the best way to get the most out of the site. Remember, you also get a free day on kennyroy.com whenever you send in an Ask Videomail question. There's no limit to the number of questions you can send in. So if you are hanging around, you're like, you know what, I feel like getting a free month on kennyroy.com. Send me 30 questions and I'll make it happen. Okay? I love getting questions, so send one in if you haven't already. Also, just as a matter of sort of like a point of education, I've always said that giving critique is one of the best things you can do in order to become a better animator, because you have to kind of like turn your idea into a sort of like a coherent, concise, consumable nugget of information, right? So that process makes you understand animation better. Asking a question here on kennyroy.com is another way that you can actually get a little bit of a leg up on your own workflow, because you have to dissect what you're doing. You have to tell me, like, hey, I'm having this problem and this is what is causing this problem, you know, and all those kinds of things. So those questions actually spur you to be thinking about workflow even more. So please send me questions if you haven't already. And if you have already, keep on sending, because remember, there's no limit to how many days I will give you for free if you send in a question here on this site. Last weekend was CTN, and it was dope. Kids, I'm telling you, that was a fun show. I never know what I'm going to get out of CTN. It's always a mystery. Don't know if it's going to be more of sort of like a inspirational show, or like a little bit more of a technical show, or if I'm just going to be focusing on networking, meeting people. Who knows? It was a mix this year. The big takeaway is Frozen looks amazing. That was like seriously one of the big takeaways. Disney kind of like owned the show with their amazing artwork and animation, and just, man, they really just like brought the house down in the couple panels that I saw. Whew. And that's very exciting. I can't wait to see that. Can't wait for that to come out. Thank you for everyone that walked up to me, walked right up and just introduced yourself and said hi. It was really nice to meet all of you, especially Indie Pops. I was really lucky you caught me right as I was walking out on the last day. Would have been tragic if you came all the way to America and we didn't bump into each other, but we did. So that was awesome. Nice to meet you, India. Just things are really exciting and positive. I met some clients at CTN, and we had some really good talks. It looks like it's going to be a very, very intense and hardworking end of the year 2013, but beginning of 2014, some amazing things coming up for the studio. I'll let you know all these things as they happen for the studio here. I'm just excited. I'm an excitable guy. I'm easily excited, but I'm particularly excited right now. I think that there's a lot to be excited for. So, without further ado, let's get to the question. It's a doozy, so I'll give you enough time to read it, hopefully, but check it out. What it kind of seems like this animator is having trouble with is translating my stride length tutorial into a walk of a character being moved around by the master controller, and that's fine. And I went into that just a little bit in an Ask Videomail recently, but I thought I would just like show you very, very quickly one method for how to make sure you're getting your character, you're using that stride length correctly. And if you are doing it correctly and you follow this along, or follow this along, either way, if you're following something in some manner, you'll get past this little block that you're having. If I understand the question correctly, I hope I understand the question correctly. It just seems like you're not able to do a walk cycle where they're walking in place and you're using the master control to move them around. The biggest problem that you get is sliding, and you can get rid of the sliding exact same way that you would doing the normal stride length workflow. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Okay, so let's dive into Maya. We'll jump in, and hopefully you'll get you'll get your question answered from this. Okay, so anyway, oh, and I do like to know if you guys have a preference for so what I can do is, if you look at how big this is, the main window here, I can record a lower resolution, which would mean that you actually can read the text, but that means that there's obviously a lot less screen space, and the menus are taking up a huge amount of the area. So like you'll end up with like a panel that's like this big. So that being said, if it's important for you to read the menus, I just kind of assume that KennyRoy.com is a little bit more of like a medium to high-end kind of training, whereas maybe for the animation MOOC, what I'll do is I'll make sure that everything is easily readable. And what I would just have to do is I'd have to turn the resolution down on this monitor. So if you have a really strong preference and you're tired of not being able to really make out the text, then let me know. Okay. Anyway, so here we have our character, and remember, there's two different ways that you can find the stride length. One is you can grab his IK mover, and if both feet are starting at 0, then you can grab the IK mover and you can grab 1 foot and you can move it forward, move them both forward, so that he's taking 1 comfortable step. Okay, and that 1 comfortable step, okay, you double that for your stride length, right? It's that simple. For a biped, you double that for the stride length. Okay, that simple. So the other way is you move 1 foot forward and 1 foot back, and you leave the root control in the middle, and then the distance between these 2 feet, which is the same thing you're doing with the other workflow, except that you're starting from 0, so you don't actually have to consider the other foot. But the distance between these 2 feet, you double that. Okay, so this one right now is at translate Z of 30, and the back one is at translate Z of negative 30. That's 60. So my stride length is 120. It's that simple, right? We found the stride length. Now we know exactly how far he is traveling every single cycle. All right, and the cycle is 2 steps. Now, the issue that normally happens, the problem that normally comes up, is that when your goal rather is to animate a character that is being moved around by that master controller, is that you get a lot of sliding. And when you have to realize that as you're animating your character, the foot is only moving. It only has, basically, in a treadmill walk, it only has the frames when it's planted, when it's down, to actually be moving on the ground. In other words, you only have available for your use those frames when the foot is on the ground, y equals 0. Okay, and that's important to realize for this very, very simple reason, which is that if you look at this character, oops, forgot to copy this frame. Okay, so I made a very, very super simple 12 frame walk. Okay, it's probably a little too fast. For this stride length, it's probably a little too fast, but 12 frames, which means it's 13 frames long. Okay, because you lose a frame at the end, because the last frame is the first frame. Okay. Actually, I'm going to hide my face just because I want you guys to be able to see the timeline down here. Okay. Okay. So, very, very, very simple walk, right? Okay. And when you're playing this back, I'm playing frame 13, but you wouldn't play frame. Sorry about that. I keep on forgetting not to use my numpad for typing anything. You wouldn't play frame 13, you just play frame 12. So here it is looping, okay? Okay, but we need to work with frame 13, so I'm gonna put it back to 13, okay? All right, so what do I mean by what I just said? So here's frame 1, and this front foot is planted, all right? And it's going back to the position -30 of the back foot. As you can see right here, it's at -30, and then it goes back up to frame +30, okay? So, but it's only on the ground frame 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, okay? Because why? When it is after starting on frame 8, it's actually in the air. So what is that? What is my real point here? My point here is that you have to find the speed of your character and apply that speed to the foot as it's planted. So how many frames is this foot planted? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then it picks up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So it's on the ground for 6 frames. So what's 120 when you are considering the stride length? 1 foot is going to be down for half the stride, so it's going to move 60, right? It's going to be in the air moving the rest of the way. So 60 divided by 6 frames, it has to move 10 units per frame. Does that make sense? I hope so. So it has a little bit of slow in and slow out right now, but in general, you can bet that the arc. In fact, well, let's just do that. Let's just add that. Okay, I'm going to break these tangents. Oops. Oopsie. I'm just going to make these in and out tangents linear. And as you can see, hopefully you can see, it goes right through these corners on the graph. And what are those? Frame 2, it's exactly at 20. Frame 1 at 10, 0, 0. 5 is at -10. 6, it's at -20. And 7 is at -30. So that is a perfect linear. That would be if it's interpolated perfectly linearly, okay? Which is fine, which is totally fine, okay? Because the amount of like slow in and slow out that you're getting is really actually in the body, because in a treadmill walk it's relative. It's the position of the body to the feet, okay? So you can actually adjust the body to get that back in there if you'd like, okay? But let's just do this. Let's take a look at this concept another way, okay? The reason that you're having trouble, I think, moving the master controller and getting the guy walking is because you haven't figured this little fact out yet, okay? So let's take a quick look at moving the body forward, okay? So in 13 frames, he's going to go how far? We say 120, right? Oops. I did it again. I'm like Britney Spears. 120. Okay. Now watch. See how his foot is generally staying. See that back foot, or this foot that's planted right here. Right. See how it's generally staying in the same place. Right. Well, that's just a function of the fact that, and I just made my my slider of my mouse controller linear as well. That's just a function of the slow in and slow out that's happening. The sliding is just a function of the slow in and slow out that's happening. Okay? Let's do an experiment though. Let's create a locator. Okay? There it is. Let's scale it up so we can see it. Now let's snap it to using a point constraint and then deleting it. Let's snap it to this foot's position, right? Pretty cool, right? All right, great. So now, on every single frame, I'm going to set a key, and now on every single frame, I'm going to snap it back to this locator. Why am I moving it out of the way first? Because I don't want to I don't want the Maya thinking I'm trying to snap it to anything but this controller. So I'm moving it totally out of the way. Now look, now that foot is absolutely perfectly planted. Perfectly planted. right? Just because I snapped it, I moved it and I set a key on ones, okay? So I can delete this control. It's not a constraint or anything, okay? Now you could do a constraint. I'll show you that in 1 second, okay? But now let's look at this foot's values, okay? At Z, it's at 30. It says 29.99999. Ignore that. We wouldn't snap it on the first frame or the last frame. We wouldn't actually re-snap it on frame 1 and 7. But at any rate. Frame 2, it's at 20. 10, 0, negative 10, negative 20, negative 30. Look at that. So linearly, that foot is planted perfectly on the ground. Now that is a workflow that you can actually use to get it so that your character's feet don't slide. So you can actually do this backwards. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine for a second, where'd that thing go? There it is. All right, there's the locator. Imagine for a second that your character, that you came up with a stride length, but you didn't animate your character's legs first. You could animate, once you have the stride length, you can animate the master controller forward 120 frames, 120 units in 12 frames, 1 to 13, right? And then you could do the following. You could say this is the planted foot, and I don't know how to divide. Let's say you only want the feet down for like 5 frames. Well, I don't know how to divide that. Let's say your stride length is like 96, and it's five frames down. It's really very messy. There's like a remainder and everything. That's not going to work out very well, is it? No. So you can just do this instead. You take your foot, okay? You come up with your start pose, then take the locator and constrain the foot. Okay, I'm going to do a point constraint, right? And then on all these frames, 2, 3, 4, 5, all right? Let's say you want it to be 5 frames. That's fine. I'm just going to do the rest of the frames, 5, 6, 7, and then delete the locator. Boom, look at that. Your foot is perfectly planted. And you don't have to know. It doesn't matter to you what those values are. In fact, the values are going to be the same. Here we go. Frame 1, 30, 20, 10, 0, negative 10, negative 20, negative 30. Okay, you see that? So the interesting thing is that stride length, if you calculate your stride length correctly, you can actually just use the stride length to kind of like set up the master controller to be working for you, and then the feet will just basically they can be almost like filled in using a constraint like that. Or if you just want to like drag it on top of the locator, that's fine too, and set the key. Either way is fine. Okay, the constraint is probably a little bit quicker once you get the hang of it and you used it a few times. Okay, so just to directly speak to the animator that sent in this question right now, my guess is that you're coming up with a stride length, but then what's happening is you don't know how, when you start moving the master controller around, how the feet are ever supposed to stay, working with that stride length. And the simplification of the idea that I just said is that stride length translates into speed. It translates into the distance it has to, the foot has to travel each frame with simple division, okay, when you're talking about a treadmill walk cycle instead of a walk cycle, in space. Okay, I hope that makes a lot of sense. I love that question. I'd love to see more questions along those veins. I think it's very interesting. I think it's easy to kind of get to the nitty gritty of it, but it's difficult to really master it. So it's fun to answer questions like this. I'd love to see more Maya files. Remember, you can send me your Maya files if you're having a problem, even if you don't know what's going on. If it's technical or artistic, just send me your Maya file. I'd love to open it up and help you on it. Okay, send them to webmaster@kennyroy.com. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks for coming up to me again at CTN. Look out on the site for a lot more announcements for fun things that are going on. Hope you're joining the Anim Gym. If you don't know what it is, check out the homepage of kennyroy.com. I don't know how you couldn't know what it is by now, but jump into the forums to join the fun in the Anim Gym. I've been blessed. This is really just an exciting time. Thank you for being here. Good luck with your animation, and as always, rock on.